In this video, we're going through 2 hours of Simpsons facts, trivia, and stories you've probably never heard before. So settle in, get comfortable, and let's get started. The longest-running scripted primetime show in American television history almost didn't make it past its first episode. And the reason why is one of the strangest stories in TV history. It starts in 1987 in the lobby of a Hollywood office building. A cartoonist named Matt Groening was about to pitch animated shorts for a variety show called The Tracey Ullman Show. He had originally planned to pitch characters from his comic strip, Life in Hell. But sitting in that lobby, minutes before the meeting, he realized he'd have to sign away the rights to his own creation. So instead of walking in with prepared material, he grabbed a piece of paper and started sketching. Right there in the lobby, minutes before the most important meeting of his career, he drew a family, a father, a mother, a son, 2 daughters. He named them after his own family members. His father was Homer, his mother was Margaret, which became Marge. His sisters were Lisa and Maggie. And the son, the troublemaker, he named Bart, an anagram of the word brat. Those crude, last-minute lobby sketches became the most famous animated family in the history of television. But it almost went very differently. The shorts ran on The Tracey Ullman Show for 2 years, 48 of them between 1987 and 1989. They were rough. The animation was crude. The voices hadn't fully formed yet. The storylines were mostly confined to the family's house on Evergreen Terrace. And here's something that most people don't know. Tracey Ullman herself reportedly didn't like the animated segments. She tried to get them removed from her show. The woman whose show gave birth to The Simpsons actively wanted them gone, but the shorts were popular enough to get greenlit as a standalone half-hour series. Fox ordered 13 episodes, and this is where the story nearly falls apart completely. The original plan was for an episode called Some Enchanted Evening to serve as the series premiere. Everything was on track. Scripts were written, voice recordings were done. The episode was sent to Klasky Csupo, the animation studio handling production. Klasky Csupo, by the way, would go on to create Rugrats. But when the animation came back for Some Enchanted Evening, it was so bad that the producers couldn't air it. The quality was that poor. The intended premiere of what would become the most successful animated show ever made was shelved because the animation looked terrible. They needed a replacement, and they needed it fast. A Christmas special that had been in production, Simpsons Roasting on an Open Fire, was rushed into the premiere slot. It aired on December 17, 1989, and approximately 26.7 million people watched it. For context, Fox was barely a real network at that point. They were the scrappy upstart competing against ABC, NBC, and CBS. And this little cartoon about a yellow family drew nearly 27 million viewers on its very first night. 3 people made it happen. Matt Groening gave it the concept and the characters. James L. Brooks, the legendary producer behind Terms of Endearment and Broadcast News, developed it through his production company Gracie Films and served as executive producer. Brooks would go on to win 12 Emmys for The Simpsons alone, giving him 22 total across his career, which is still the record for most primetime Emmys won by a single person. And then there was Sam Simon. Simon is the one most people forget, but insiders will tell you he was the key architect of the show's comedic voice. He assembled the original writing staff. He built the writer's room culture that would produce some of the greatest television comedy ever written. Simon died in March of 2015, but he retained his executive producer credit and his share of the profits until the end. And the theme song, Danny Elfman, the composer behind the Batman score, and Edward Scissorhands and dozens of other iconic films, wrote the Simpsons theme. And according to Elfman, he wrote it on the drive home from his very first meeting with Matt Groening. Just composed it in his head while driving. He's called it one of his easiest compositions and also the most popular piece of music he's ever created. That theme has never been replaced. It's been rearranged a few times. Alf Clausen did a new arrangement starting in season 3. It got a new opening sequence when the show switched to HD in season 20. But the melody, the Danny Elfman melody from 1989, that's been playing every Sunday night for over 35 years. But getting the show on the air was only the beginning. What happened next turned a scrappy little cartoon into the most dominant force in television history. Season 1 was a hit, but season 2 is where things got genuinely insane. Fox made one of the most audacious programming decisions in television history. They moved The Simpsons from Sunday nights to Thursday nights at 8 p.m. Thursday at 8 p.m. was sacred ground. That was NBC's time slot. That was The Cosby Show's time slot. The Cosby Show was the #1 program in America. And Fox, this little upstart network with a cartoon about a yellow family, decided to go head-to-head with Bill Cosby. It worked. Not immediately, but it worked. Homer at the Bat, the season 3 episode where Mr. Burns recruits Major League Baseball players for the Plant softball team, became the first Simpsons episode to beat The Cosby Show in its original airing. And then came the episode that still holds the record. Bart Gets an F, the season 2 premiere, pulled approximately 33.6 million viewers. That made it the highest rated episode in the show's history. It was also the highest rated program in Fox network history at the time. A cartoon about a 10-year-old boy failing a test beat The Cosby Show. And then came Bartmania. If you were alive in 1990 and 1991, you remember this. Bart Simpson was everywhere. The t-shirts alone were a cultural phenomenon. Eat my shorts. Don't have a cow, man. I'm Bart Simpson. Who the hell are you? These phrases were on every piece of clothing, every lunchbox, every poster. The official merchandise generated billions of dollars. But then there were the bootleg shirts. The Black Bart shirts became their own underground cultural movement in 1990, depicting Bart as a black character with sayings that had nothing to do with the show. They sold millions of units completely outside of Fox's control. The music got even bigger. The Simpsons Sing the Blues came out in December of 1990 and sold over 2 million copies in the United States alone. The lead single was Do the Bartman, and here's a detail that was kept secret for nearly 30 years. Do the Bartman was co-written by Michael Jackson. He received no credit for it at the time. The song topped charts in multiple countries. A cartoon character had a #1 hit, co-written by the biggest pop star on the planet, and nobody knew. Time magazine named Bart one of the most influential people of the century in 1998. Think about that. A fictional 10-year-old cartoon character on the same list as actual world leaders and scientists and inventors. That's how big The Simpsons got. But with that kind of cultural dominance came backlash. Some parents and schools banned Bart-themed clothing, calling him a terrible role model for children. And then the President of the United States got involved. George H.W. Bush said publicly that American families should be, quote, more like the Waltons and less like the Simpsons. The show's response was immediate and perfect. Bart quipped that they were just like the Waltons because they were praying for an end to the Depression, too. And a few years later, the show dedicated an entire episode called Two Bad Neighbors to lampooning Bush, having a fictionalized version of the former president move in across the street from The Simpsons. First Lady Barbara Bush also called the show the dumbest thing she'd ever seen. The producers wrote her a letter, in character, as Marge Simpson. The letter was polite, warm, and genuinely funny, and Barbara Bush actually wrote back apologizing for her remark. She said it had been a prior commitment that she'd broken and that she hadn't meant to offend The Simpsons. While Bart was the face of the cultural explosion, behind the scenes, 6 voice actors were quietly building one of the most remarkable performances in television history. And their story is just as fascinating as anything that happened on screen. The Simpsons has always run on a deceptively small cast. 6 principal voice actors have carried the show for over 3 decades, and between them they voice hundreds of characters. The range is staggering when you actually stop and think about it. Dan Castellaneta voices Homer, which alone would be a full career's worth of work. But he also does Krusty the Clown, Grandpa Simpson, Barney Gumble, Hans Moleman, Groundskeeper Willie, Mayor Quimby, Sideshow Mel, Itchy, Gil Gunderson, and dozens more. Every time you hear a random Springfield resident speak, there's a good chance that's Dan Castellaneta doing a voice you've never even thought about. Julie Kavner voices Marge, and she also voices Marge's sisters Patty and Selma, plus their mother Jacqueline Bouvier. She's one of the only cast members whose roles are almost entirely within one family, but the vocal distinctions between Marge's warm rasp and Patty and Selma's flat, cynical monotone are completely different performances. Nancy Cartwright voices Bart, but she also does Nelson Muntz, Todd Flanders, Ralph Wiggum, and Database, among others. And here's a piece of trivia that always surprises people. Nancy Cartwright originally auditioned for Lisa. She walked in to read for the quiet, thoughtful daughter, heard the Bart audition sides, and asked to try those instead. They gave her the role on the spot. One of the most iconic character voices in animation history almost didn't happen because the actress was going to play a different character. Yeardley Smith voices Lisa, and she's notable for being one of the few principal cast members who primarily voices just one character. Lisa is essentially Yeardley Smith with minor vocal adjustments. It's the closest any of the main voices come to the actor's real speaking voice. Hank Azaria was a powerhouse of range. He voiced Mo Sislak, Chief Wiggum, Comic Book Guy, Apu Nahasapima Petalon, Professor Frink, and many, many more. At one point, Azaria was voicing so many characters that it would have been easier to list the Springfield residents he didn't play, and Harry Shearer. Mr. Burns and Waylon Smithers alone would be impressive enough because those two characters have completely different vocal profiles. Burns is frail and aristocratic, Smithers is eager and subservient. But Shearer also does Ned Flanders, Principal Skinner, Kent Brockman, Reverend Lovejoy, Lenny Leonard, Otto Mann, Scratchy, Rainier Wolfcastle, Kang, and he originally voiced Dr. Hibbert. Each one of those characters sounds completely different from the others. It's one of the great acting performances in any medium, and most people never think about it because it's animation. The salary history of these 6 actors tells its own dramatic story. When the show started, they were making roughly $30,000 per episode. Good money, but not life-changing money for the kind of work they were doing. By 1998, they wanted more. They threatened to strike. The salaries jumped to about $125,000 per episode. In 2004, they pushed harder. They actually stopped showing up for script reads. The salaries climbed to $360,000 per episode. By 2008, at the peak, the 6 principal voice actors were reportedly earning around $400,000 per episode each. And then came 2011. Fox looked at the production costs, looked at the declining ratings, and told the producers that unless costs were cut by 45%, they were canceling the show. The Simpsons, the most iconic animated series in television history, nearly died because it was too expensive. The cast took pay cuts, dropping back to roughly $300,000 per episode, but with back-end profit participation added in. The show survived. Harry Shearer himself nearly left in 2015 over a separate contract dispute. He was briefly gone from the show before a new deal was reached. Imagine The Simpsons without Mr. Burns, without Ned Flanders, without Principal Skinner. That was almost reality. But the losses that actually happened are the ones that hit hardest. Phil Hartman voiced 2 of the show's most beloved recurring characters. Troy McClure, the washed-up actor who hosted every infomercial and educational film in Springfield, and Lionel Hutz, the hilariously incompetent lawyer who operated out of a shoe. Hartman was murdered in May of 1998. He was 49 years old. After his death, the show made a decision that revealed a lot about the people running it. They retired both characters. They never recast them. Troy McClure and Lionel Hutz simply stopped getting speaking roles. But if you look carefully in later episodes, you can still spot them. standing silently in crowd scenes in the background of town meetings, never speaking, but still there. It was the writer's way of keeping Hartman's legacy in the show without trying to replace what couldn't be replaced. Marcia Wallace voiced Edna Crabapple from the very beginning. Bart's perpetually exhausted, chain-smoking teacher became one of the show's most reliable recurring characters over 25 seasons. Wallace died in October of 2013. Like with Hartman, the show retired the character rather than recast her. They wrote Edna out off-screen and confirmed her death in a later episode. But the tribute that people remember is the chalkboard gag. The next episode after Wallace's death opened with Bart writing on the board just one line, "We'll really miss you, Mrs. K." In 2020, the show made a significant change to how it handled casting. They announced that white actors would no longer voice non-white characters. This was a direct response to larger cultural conversations about representation in entertainment. Hank Azaria stepped away from voicing Apu. Dr. Hibbert was recast with Kevin Michael Richardson, and Carl Carlson was recast with Alex Desert. And in November of 2024, Pamela Hayden retired after 35 years on the show. She'd voiced Milhouse, Rod Flanders, and Jimbo Jones since the beginning. Kelly MacLeod took over Milhouse starting in season 37, with Mo Collins taking Jimbo and Chris Edgerly picking up Rod Flanders. The actors gave Springfield its voice, but it was the writers who gave it a soul. And the story of The Simpsons writing room reads like a who's who of comedy legends. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this. Moving on. 154 different people have been credited with writing or co-writing at least one episode of The Simpsons as of January 2026. That's an enormous number. But a few names stand above the rest, and their stories are fascinating. John Swartzwelder is the most prolific individual writer in the show's history, credited on 59 episodes. To put that in perspective, that's more episodes than most shows ever produce in their entire run. And Swartzwelder is legendary for being almost impossible to find. He's reclusive in a way that borders on mythical. For years, he wrote many of his scripts in a booth at a local coffee shop. Just sat there day after day writing some of the funniest television scripts ever produced in a diner booth. When California passed an indoor smoking ban, Swartzwelder couldn't smoke in the diner anymore. So he bought the booth, had it taken out of the restaurant and installed in his own house. Then he continued writing from the same booth, just in his living room now, where he could smoke in peace. Then there's Conan O'Brien. Before he was one of the most famous late-night hosts in television history, Conan was a Simpsons writer. He joined the staff in 1991 and stayed through 1993 before leaving for his own show. On his very first day in the writer's room, a bird flew through the window and killed itself. That's the kind of omen that would make most people reconsider their career choices. But Conan stayed, and he wrote Marge versus the Monorail, which is widely considered one of the greatest Simpsons episodes ever made. He also wrote New Kid on the Block, Homer Goes to College, and co-wrote Treehouse of Horror 4. The writing staff of The Simpsons doubled as a training ground for people who would go on to reshape television comedy. David X. Cohen was a mid-era Simpsons writer who later co-created Futurama with Matt Groening. Greg Daniels wrote for the show before going on to create both The Office and Parks and Recreation. These weren't just good writers who happened to work on The Simpsons. The Simpsons writers' room was where the next generation of comedy television was being built. The show has been defined by its showrunners, and each era has a distinct personality that fans can identify almost by feel. The first 2 seasons were collaborative, run jointly by Groening, Brooks, and Sam Simon. Those early years were grounded and emotional. The family felt real. The comedy grew from character, not spectacle. Homer was a struggling father trying to provide for his family. Bart was a real kid with real school problems. Lisa was genuinely smart in a way that felt earned. Seasons 3 and 4 were run by Al Jean and Mike Rice as co-showrunners, and this is where most fans agree the golden age began. The pace got faster, the gag density increased dramatically. The writing became sharper, wittier, more confident. Season 4 is often cited as the creative peak of the entire series. Episodes like Marge versus the Monorail, Mr. Plow, and Lisa's first word mixed emotional depth with brilliant comedy in a way that nobody had ever really done in animation before. David Merkin took over for seasons 5 and 6, and the show got weirder, more surreal, more willing to push boundaries. Homer went to space in Deep Space Homer. Sideshow Bob stalked Bart through one of the most perfect parodies ever made in Cape Fear. And season 6 ended with the famous Who Shot Mr. Burns cliffhanger, which was treated like a genuine cultural event. Fox ran a special called Springfield's Most Wanted, styled after America's Most Wanted, just to tease the suspects. Bill Oakley and Josh Weinstein co-ran seasons 7 and 8, and they shifted focus toward the secondary cast. They gave us 22 short films about Springfield, which includes the immortal Steamed Hams sketch. They gave us Lisa the Vegetarian, where Paul McCartney guest starred and made one specific demand that the show has honored for 3 decades. McCartney told the producers that his only condition for appearing was that Lisa would remain a vegetarian permanently. They agreed, and Lisa Simpson has been a vegetarian ever since 1995. If you play the closing credits of that episode backward, you can hear McCartney reading a recipe for lentil soup. Season 7 also gave us You Only Move Twice, featuring Hank Scorpio, who remains one of the most beloved one-off characters in the show's history. A James Bond villain who also happens to be the friendliest, most supportive boss Homer has ever had. Albert Brooks voiced Scorpio, and he was originally planned to return as the villain in the Simpsons movie. Someone in production decided to go with a different Brooks character instead, Russ Cargill. Fans still haven't forgiven that decision. Seasons 9 through 12 were the Mike Scully era, and this is where the show starts to divide fans. Homer became wilder, more reckless, the plots got zanier. This is the era that coined the term jerk-ass Homer among fans, describing a version of Homer who was more deliberately obnoxious and less sympathetically bumbling than the Homer of earlier seasons. It's also the era that produced The Principal and the Pauper, the season 9 episode that retconned Principal Skinner's entire backstory by revealing he was an imposter named Armin Tamzarian. That episode is widely considered a turning point. Even some of the show's own writers have criticized it. It's one of those rare TV moments where you can feel the show's relationship with its own continuity permanently shift. Phil Hartman died during the Scully era. His murder in 1998 left 2 holes in the show's cast that were never filled. Troy McClure and Lionel Hutz simply faded into the background, present but silent, like ghosts. Then came the Al Jean era, and it lasted 2 decades. Al Jean took over as sole showrunner in season 13 and held that position through season 32. That's 20 seasons under one person, the longest single showrunner tenure in the history of the medium. Gene stabilized the show. He returned it to something closer to its roots. After the Scully era's more outlandish experiments, he guided it through the transition to digital animation, the switch to HD, the Simpsons movie, 2 writer strikes, a near cancellation, the deaths of multiple cast members, and the complete transformation of the television landscape from broadcast dominance to streaming. Starting in season 33, Matt Selman took over as the primary showrunner, and something interesting happened. The show started getting better again. Critics noticed, fans noticed. The writing became more ambitious, more willing to break format, more cinematic. The modern renaissance, some people call it. Selman has been announced as the sole showrunner from season 38 onward, with Al Jean moving to consulting producer. It's the first time in over 20 years that Gene won't be directly running episodes. Every single episode of The Simpsons takes approximately 6 months to produce. That pipeline includes outlining, drafting, room rewrites, table reads, animatics, layout, which is described by the production team as one of the most time-consuming steps, and late rewrites that can happen right up until the last possible moment. It's a grind, and the show has done it over 800 times. The 2007 to 2008 Writers Guild strike shortened season 19 to 20 episodes. The 2023 WGA strike reduced season 35 to 18 episodes. Both times the show survived. Both times production picked back up and continued like it always has. There's something almost stubborn about The Simpsons' refusal to stop existing. The writing was brilliant, but the show also underwent a quiet visual revolution that most viewers never even noticed happening. When The Simpsons first aired, every frame was hand-drawn, paper and paint. Actual physical cells held up to light and photographed one frame at a time. That's how all animation worked back then, and the studio handling The Simpsons was Klasky Supo, the same studio that would later create Rugrats. If you go back and watch seasons 1 through 3, you can see the Klasky Supo style immediately. The animation is rougher, more fluid in some ways, but less polished. The characters look slightly different. Homer's eyes are a little bigger. The colors are a little more muted. There's a looseness to the movement that later seasons would sand away. Starting in season 4, Film Roman took over the animation, and they held the contract all the way through season 27. That's 24 seasons of visual refinement. The characters became more consistent, the backgrounds got cleaner, the whole look tightened up into what most people think of when they picture The Simpsons. But here's something that was happening quietly in the background the entire time. A huge portion of the actual animation work wasn't being done in the United States. Studios in South Korea, primarily ACOM, along with Rough Draft Studios and Animvision, handled the labor-intensive parts. The in-between frames, the tweening, the coloring, the filming, the writing, voice recording, and primary production all happened in Los Angeles. But the grunt work of actually making the animation move was outsourced overseas. This is standard practice for American animation and has been for decades, but most people never think about the fact that The Simpsons was partially produced in South Korea for its entire run. The shift to digital happened gradually. The first experiment was in 1995 when the season 7 episode Radioactive Man used some digital techniques. They tested it again on Tennis the Menace in season 12. But the full switchover happened in season 14, starting with the episode The Great Louse Detective. From that point forward, every frame of The Simpsons has been digital ink and paint. No more physical cells, no more painting by hand. The entire process moved to computers. And if you watch closely, you can see the transition. The colors get brighter, the lines get cleaner, the shadows become more consistent. It's subtle, but it's there. The big visual change that everybody noticed was HD. Season 20, which ran from 2008 to 2009, was when the show made the jump to high-definition widescreen. The opening sequence was completely redesigned. The couch gag got longer. The scope of the animation opened up to fill a wider frame. For the first time in 20 years, The Simpsons looked different in a way that even casual viewers could immediately see. Some of the show's most visually ambitious episodes pushed animation in directions nobody expected from a network sitcom. The Homer Cubed segment of Treehouse of Horror 6, which aired in 1995, featured pioneering 3D CGI animation. This was one of the earliest uses of computer-generated imagery in a primetime animated series. Homer literally leaves the 2D world and enters a three-dimensional space. In 1995, that was genuinely groundbreaking. Brick Like Me, from season 25, animated the entire episode in Lego style. Every character, every building, every prop was rendered as if it were built from Lego bricks. It was a collaboration with the Lego company, and it took the animation team significantly longer than a standard episode to produce. Season 33 onward, under Matt Selman's creative direction, has pushed the show into even more experimental visual territory. A Serious Flanders was a two-part limited series pastiche that looked and felt nothing like a typical Simpsons episode. The show has always been visually adventurous when it wants to be. It just doesn't always get credit for it because people assume animation is animation. Each episode costs an estimated $5 million to produce. That figure is from 2011, and it's likely higher now. The Simpsons movie had an estimated budget of $75 million. Film, Roman, and Rough Draft Studios handled the movie's animation, and it took years of development before a single frame was finalized. And then there's the music. Alf Clausen became the show's primary composer starting in season 2, and he held that role for 27 years. He scored nearly 600 episodes. He conducted a 35-piece orchestra for the show's underscore. Think about that. A 35-piece orchestra recording original music every week for a cartoon. Clausen won 2 Emmy Awards for original music and lyrics, was nominated for 21 Emmys total for The Simpsons, and won 5 Annie Awards. In 2017, he was fired as a cost-cutting measure. He sued. The case was settled or dismissed. Alf Clausen died on May 29, 2025, at 84 years old. After his departure, the show's music was handled by Bleeding Fingers Music, a company co-founded by Hans Zimmer. And speaking of Zimmer, he composed the score for The Simpsons movie in 2007. From season 28 onward, animation production moved in-house at Fox Television Animation in Burbank. The show that started with crude paper sketches in a lobby is now produced entirely within a major studio's own animation department. The technology changed completely. The people changed. The process changed. But the show kept going. With hundreds of episodes to fill, the show needed more than just the Simpson family. And so Springfield grew into one of the most densely populated fictional towns in television history. The Simpsons holds a Guinness World Record for most guest stars featured in a television series. As of April 2020, 810 unique guest stars had appeared on the show. 810. That number has only grown since. And the range of people who've lent their voices to Springfield is genuinely absurd. Paul McCartney, Metallica, Tom Hanks, Meryl Streep, Mark Hamill, Ricky Gervais, Stephen Hawking, Lady Gaga, Elon Musk. Elizabeth Taylor showed up to voice Maggie's first word, which was Daddy. Dustin Hoffman guest starred under the pseudonym Sam Ettick. Michael Jackson appeared under the name John J. Smith. The show became a place where the biggest celebrities in the world wanted to show up, and the producers could afford to be picky about who got in. Kelsey Grammer, who plays Frasier Crane, also voices Sideshow Bob, Bart's recurring nemesis. And here's a detail that perfectly captures the show's attention to casting. Sideshow Bob's brother Cecil is voiced by David Hyde Pierce, who plays Frasier's brother Niles on the same show. And their father in The Simpsons is voiced by John Mahoney, who played Frasier's father on Frasier. The show essentially recreated the Frasier family tree within Springfield using the same actors playing similar familial relationships in a completely different context. That level of meta-casting is something only The Simpsons would even think to attempt. Now let's talk about the characters themselves, because Springfield is full of details that have been hiding in plain sight for decades. Krusty the Clown was originally designed to be Homer Simpson's secret alter ego. Matt Groening's original concept was that Homer would be Krusty in disguise. The running joke would be that Bart worships Krusty and disrespects Homer, never realizing they were the same person. Look at the character designs side by side and you can see it. Krusty's face shape is essentially Homer with clown makeup. The idea was eventually scrapped because it would have limited the kinds of stories they could tell, but the visual DNA is still there. If you strip the makeup off Krusty, you're looking at Homer. Comic book guy, the sarcastic proprietor of the Android's Dungeon and baseball card shop, went without a real name for 16 full seasons. He was just comic book guy. Every other character in Springfield had a name, but this guy was defined entirely by his job. It wasn't until season 16, in the episode Homer and Ned's Hail Mary Pass, that he casually mentioned to Ned Flanders that his name was Jeff Albertson. 16 years, and the show apparently based the character on Matt Groening himself. Waylon Smithers, Mr. Burns' devoted assistant, appeared as a black character in his first on-screen appearance. This was actually an animation error. A problem with the color palette during production made his skin appear dark. The producers noticed and briefly considered keeping the change, but decided against it out of concern that having a black character in a servile role to an elderly white billionaire might generate complaints. So Smithers became yellow like everyone else, starting with his next appearance. In the Arabic version of The Simpsons, Homer is renamed Omar. He drinks soda instead of Duff beer. Pork products are removed. The localization completely reshapes the character's vices to fit a different cultural context. Homer's core personality survives the translation. He's still lazy, still lovable, still a disaster of a human being. He just doesn't drink. Mo Sislak's phone number is 764-84377. That's one digit longer than a standard US phone number, which is a deliberate gag. But there's another layer. If you map those digits to letters on a telephone keypad, they spell out Smithers. The prank calls that Bart makes to Moe's Tavern have a hidden connection to Mr. Burns' assistant built right into the phone number. Bart Simpson's locker combination at Springfield Elementary is 362436. That's not a random number. It's a reference to the Commodore's song, Brick House, where those measurements describe a woman's figure. An incredibly adult joke hidden in a detail that children would never notice and most adults would never think to look up. God and Jesus are the only characters in the entire Simpsons universe who have 5 fingers. Every other character, human or otherwise, has 4 fingers. This is standard practice in animation because 4-fingered hands are easier to draw and animate. But The Simpsons made a deliberate choice to give the divine characters an extra digit as a subtle visual distinction. The 1975 film Day of the Locust, directed by John Schlesinger, features a character named Homer Simpson, played by Donald Sutherland. That movie came out 12 years before Matt Groening sketched his characters in that lobby, and 14 years before the show premiered. Sutherland later guest-voiced on The Simpsons in Lisa the Iconoclast. Homer's email address, chunkylover53@aol.com, was set up as a real, active email account. Anyone who sent an email to that address received an automated reply. The show planted a real, functional detail from a fictional world into the real one, and fans who discovered it felt like they'd found a secret passage between Springfield and their own lives, and Springfield itself. The town's location has never been officially confirmed. This is deliberate. There are 34 different places named Springfield across the United States, and for decades the show played a game of refusing to pin down which state the Simpsons live in. They'd tease it, then pull away. They'd almost reveal it, then cut to a commercial. Matt Groening eventually admitted that he named it after Springfield, Oregon, which is near his hometown of Portland. But the show has never made this canonical. Springfield is everywhere and nowhere. It's every American town, which is exactly the point. Homer Simpson's voice is the most downloaded sat-nav voice in the world. People literally navigate their daily commutes listening to Homer telling them to turn left. It might be the most intimate relationship any fictional character has ever had with real humans. He's in their cars, giving them directions every single day. Some of the show's most fascinating stories aren't about characters that stayed. They're about characters that were lost. And the circumstances of those losses reveal a lot about how the show operates behind the scenes. We've already talked about Phil Hartman and the retirement of Troy McClure and Lionel Hutz. We've talked about Marcia Wallace and Edna Krabappel. But those aren't the only significant departures, and some of the stories behind the others are just as interesting. Maud Flanders, Ned's wife, was killed off in the season 11 episode Alone Again, Natura Diddley. In the episode, she's hit by a t-shirt cannon at the Springfield Speedway and falls to her death. It was sudden, violent, and played for dark comedy. But the reason she was killed off had nothing to do with the character. Voice actress Maggie Roswell had been flying from her home in Denver to Los Angeles to record her lines. She asked the show for a raise to help cover her travel expenses. The negotiations fell apart. Roswell left the show, and the writers decided to kill Maud rather than recast her. It was one of those decisions that changed the show permanently. Ned Flanders went from being a happily married man to a widower, and that shift in his character informed every Ned storyline that followed. His relationship with Faith, his loneliness, his struggles as a single father to Rod and Todd, all of it traces back to a voice actress who wanted help paying for plane tickets. Roswell did eventually come back. She returned in season 14 after the dispute was resolved, and she's been voicing Helen Lovejoy, Miss Hoover, and Luan Van Houten ever since. But Maud stayed dead. The show doesn't usually bring characters back from actual death. Maud Flanders is gone. Fat Tony, Springfield's resident mafia boss, died of a heart attack in the season 22 episode Donnie Fatso. And then something happened that is either brilliant meta-commentary or spectacularly lazy writing, depending on your perspective. Fat Tony was immediately replaced by his cousin, Fit Tony, who showed up to take over the family business. Fit Tony was slimmer and healthier looking, but over the course of subsequent appearances, Fit Tony gradually gained weight until he looked exactly like the original Fat Tony. He even started going by just Fat Tony. The character essentially replaced himself. Same voice, same role, same look. Technically a different person, but functionally identical. The show just kept going as if nothing had happened. Russi Taylor voiced Martin Prince, Sherry and Terry, and Uter Zorker. She died in July of 2019. Her roles were taken over primarily by Gray Delisle, also known as Gray Griffin. It was a quiet transition. There was no big farewell episode. The characters continued, just with a different voice behind them. In season 37, which is the current season as of this recording, Duffman was retired, according to reports from People magazine. That episode aired in January of 2026. Duffman, the beer mascot, the man in the cape and the belt, whose entire personality was aggressive enthusiasm and third-person speech. Even he eventually had an ending. And then there's a departure that nobody expected to be emotionally significant. Larry Dalrymple. You probably don't recognize the name, and that's the point. Larry was a background character, a barfly at Moe's Tavern, who had been appearing in the show since season 1. He was just there, in the background, drinking at the bar. Never a main character, never a focus of any storyline. Until season 35, when the episode Cremains of the Day gave him a death and a funeral. A background character who'd been quietly existing for 35 years finally got his farewell. It's one of those rare moments where the show acknowledged that Springfield is full of lives happening in the margins, and even the smallest, most anonymous character had enough of a presence to deserve a goodbye. The show has always had a complicated relationship with its own history. And nowhere is that more apparent than in the one episode you can never watch again. Moving on, Stark Raving Dad is the only episode of The Simpsons that has been completely removed from all official circulation. You cannot watch it on Disney+, you cannot find it on Hulu. It's been pulled from syndication. New pressings of the season 3 DVD set omit it entirely. It is, for all practical purposes, erased. And the story behind its erasure is one of the most complicated in the show's history. The episode is the season 3 premiere. It originally aired in 1991. The plot involves Homer being committed to a mental institution where he meets a large white man named Leon Kompowski who believes he's Michael Jackson. The speaking voice of Leon was performed by Michael Jackson himself, credited under the pseudonym John J. Smith. But here's the wrinkle. While Jackson provided the speaking voice, he wasn't allowed to sing by his own record label. So when Leon performs Lisa, It's Your Birthday, the singing was actually done by a sound-alike named Kip Lennon. For nearly 30 years, the show's creators were deliberately vague about Jackson's involvement. They didn't officially confirm it until 2019. And 2019 is when everything changed. The HBO documentary Leaving Neverland aired, detailing allegations of sexual abuse against Jackson. In response, showrunner Al Jean and executive producer James L. Brooks made the decision to pull Stark raving dad from circulation permanently. Brooks said publicly that the evidence against Jackson was overwhelming and that it felt wrong to keep profiting from his involvement with the show. The episode was removed from every platform, every rerun schedule, every future release. It's the most aggressive act of self-censorship in the show's history. Whether you agree with the decision or not, the result is striking. An episode of the longest-running animated series in television history, featuring the biggest pop star who ever lived, has been effectively deleted from the official record. It still exists in private collections and unauthorized uploads, but as far as the show is concerned, it never happened. The City of New York versus Homer Simpson, the season 9 premiere, has its own troubled history. The episode features Homer traveling to New York City to retrieve his car, which has been illegally parked at the base of the World Trade Center. The Twin Towers are prominently featured throughout the episode. After September 11, 2001, the episode was pulled from syndication. For years, you couldn't see it on reruns. It was eventually restored. But the gap in its availability is a reminder that even fictional depictions of real places can become unbearable when reality intrudes. Blame It on Lisa from season 13 caused an actual diplomatic incident. The episode depicted the family traveling to Brazil, and the portrayal of Rio de Janeiro was not flattering. Brazilian officials were furious. The episode was temporarily pulled from circulation in that region. Rio's tourism board protested. It became an international news story. A cartoon about a yellow family from a fictional American town created a real geopolitical conflict with a real country over the way that country was drawn. The Principal and the Pauper from season 9 didn't cause an international incident, but it might have caused something worse, a fan revolt. The episode reveals that Principal Skinner isn't actually Seymour Skinner. He's an imposter named Armin Tamzarian who stole the identity of the real Skinner during the Vietnam War. The real Skinner eventually shows up and reclaims his name, but by the end of the episode, the town decides they prefer the fake Skinner and sends the real one away. Everything is reset to normal, and nobody mentions it again. Fans hated it. Critics hated it. Even some of the show's own writers have publicly distanced themselves from it. The episode is widely considered the moment when The Simpsons' relationship with continuity broke in a way that could never be fully repaired. Before The Principal and the Pauper, the show played fast and loose with continuity, but generally respected the established histories of its characters. After it, there was a sense that anything could be changed, retconned, or ignored if the joke demanded it. The Apu controversy was different because it wasn't about one episode. It was about a character who had existed for decades. In 2017, comedian Hari Kondabolu released a documentary called The Problem with Apu. It examined how Apu Nahasapima Petalan, voiced by white actor Hank Azaria, had become the dominant representation of South Asian people in American pop culture for an entire generation. The documentary argued that Apu's characterization was built on stereotypes and that his ubiquity had real consequences for how South Asian Americans were perceived and treated. The show's initial response made things worse. In season 29, the episode No Good Read Goes Unpunished included a scene where Lisa directly addresses the camera and says, essentially, that some issues are too complex to address within the show's format. Marge then shows Lisa a photo of Apu inscribed with, "Don't have a cow." The implication was that the show considered the conversation about Apu to be overblown. The backlash was fierce. The scene was read as dismissive at best and condescending at worst. Hank Azaria subsequently went through what he's described publicly as a genuine process of listening and learning. He spoke with South Asian Americans about their experiences with the character. He met with community advocates. And in 2020, he stepped away from voicing Apu entirely. The character was largely phased out of the show. It remains one of the most significant cultural reckonings in animated television history, a show being forced to confront the fact that a character it had created with affection had caused real harm to real people. And then there's the strangling. Homer strangling Bart has been a running gag since the show began. Homer gets angry, grabs Bart by the neck, and shakes him while shouting, "Why, you little..." It's happened hundreds of times, but in 2024, a season 35 episode seemed to reference the possibility of retiring the gag. Media outlets ran stories asking whether The Simpsons was ending one of its most iconic recurring bits. Executive producer James L. Brooks shut it down with a single quote: "Don't think for a second we're changing anything." Homer still strangles Bart. Some things never change. Even when the culture around them shifts dramatically, some gags outlast the conversation about whether they should exist. For a show that's been on the air for over 35 years, The Simpsons has developed a reputation for something that still baffles people to this day: predicting the future. This is probably the single most talked about aspect of The Simpsons in modern internet culture. The idea that a cartoon from the 1990s somehow saw the future and embedded predictions in its episodes that came true years or even decades later. And look, some of these are genuinely eerie. Bart to the Future is a season 11 episode that aired on March 19th, 2000. In a flash-forward sequence, Lisa becomes the first female president of the United States, and she inherits the office from President Donald Trump. 16 years before Trump's 2016 election, a Simpsons episode mentioned him as a former president. The episode aired on Fox. Trump ran on a Fox-friendly platform. The coincidence is stunning. When You Dish Upon a Star from 1998 includes a scene where a sign outside a movie studio reads, "20th Century Fox, a division of Walt Disney Company." In 2019, the Walt Disney Company completed its acquisition of 21st Century Fox's entertainment assets. What was a joke about corporate consolidation in 1998 became literal reality 21 years later. The sign was almost prophetically accurate. The show has depicted smartwatch-like technology, autocorrect failures, video calling, and various other technological developments years before they became mainstream consumer products. A Season 6 episode showed a device that looks remarkably like an Apple Watch decades before Apple Watch existed. The show even appeared to predict a Nobel Prize winner. In one episode, a reference was made to a Finnish economist, and 6 years later, Bengt Holmström, a Finnish economist, actually won the Nobel Prize. The specificity of that prediction is what makes it feel uncanny. But here's the thing that the prediction hype usually leaves out. The Simpsons has produced over 800 episodes across 37 seasons. That's thousands and thousands of jokes, references, and throwaway gags covering virtually every aspect of modern life. Politics, technology, entertainment, sports, science, culture, business. When you satirize everything across that volume of content, over that span of time, some of your jokes are going to accidentally overlap with future events. It's statistical inevitability, not prophecy. The show has joked about hundreds of politicians, and most of those jokes didn't come true. They've depicted hundreds of futuristic technologies, and most of them don't exist. They've referenced hundreds of corporate mergers and business developments that never happened. We remember the hits and forget the misses because the hits are genuinely surprising and the misses are boring. That said, the prediction phenomenon became its own cultural force. Dedicated social media accounts track every apparent prediction. News outlets run stories every time a Simpsons gag appears to foreshadow a real event. And the show has leaned into the reputation in later seasons, sometimes deliberately making jokes that feel prediction adjacent because they know the internet will pick them up and amplify them. The Simpsons predicting the future is itself a self-fulfilling prophecy at this point. The show makes thousands of observations about the world. Some of them come true, and the ones that come true become the story. Predictions aside, the show's actual verifiable impact on the real world is arguably even more remarkable than its fictional crystal ball. The Simpsons hasn't just reflected American culture, it's changed the way Americans talk. Literally, the word Dio was added to the Oxford English Dictionary in 2001. Homer Simpson's grunt of frustration, written in every script as annoyed grunt, became an officially recognized English word. In French, it's translated as toe. In Spanish, it becomes ouch. An animated character's verbal tic became a multilingual addition to the human vocabulary. But dough isn't the only word the show gave to the world. Ambigun and cromulent were invented as fake words in the season 7 episode Lisa the Iconoclast. In the episode, the town motto of Springfield is, "A noble spirit embiggens the smallest man." And when a teacher asks if embiggens is a real word, another teacher replies that it's a perfectly cromulent word. Neither word existed before that episode. Both have since been added to real dictionaries. A cartoon created 2 fake words, and the English language absorbed them. Meh, the expression of supreme indifference, wasn't technically invented by The Simpsons, but the show's use of it in the episode Hungry. Hungry Homer is widely credited with popularizing it globally. Before The Simpsons, meh was an obscure bit of slang. After The Simpsons, it became universal shorthand for apathy. Cheese-eating surrender monkeys was a groundskeeper Willie Line directed at the French, and that phrase left the show and entered actual political journalism and commentary. Real journalists and real politicians have used cheese-eating surrender monkeys in serious context to describe France. A line written for a violent Scottish janitor in a cartoon became genuine political rhetoric. Linguists have noted that The Simpsons rivals Shakespeare and the Bible for the number of commonly used cultural references and idioms it has generated. That's not hyperbole. That's the actual assessment of people who study language professionally. A show that started as crude doodles in a lobby has contributed more phrases to the English language than almost any other single source in modern history. The show didn't just change language, it took on social issues years before they became mainstream political conversations. The Cartridge Family from season 9 tackled gun rights and gun culture when Homer buys a handgun. It aired in 1997, years before the gun control debate reached its current intensity. There's Something About Marrying from season 16 addressed gay marriage when Reverend Lovejoy refuses to perform same-sex ceremonies and Homer fills in. It aired in 2005, a full decade before the Supreme Court's Obergefell decision legalized same-sex marriage nationwide. Much Apu About Nothing from season 7 satirized anti-immigrant sentiment and Proposition 187-style legislation when Springfield passes a bill to deport all illegal immigrants. That was 1996. Homer's Phobia from season 8 is one of the show's most significant episodes from a cultural standpoint. John Waters guest starred as a gay antiques dealer named John who befriends the family. Homer becomes uncomfortable when he realizes John is gay and worries about the influence on Bart. By the end of the episode, Homer comes around. The episode won a GLAAD Media Award. In 1997, a cartoon about a blue-collar idiot learning to accept a gay man was considered progressive television. Paul McCartney's vegetarian demand deserves its own moment. McCartney guest starred on Lisa the Vegetarian, the season 7 episode where Lisa decides to stop eating meat. His only condition for appearing was that Lisa would remain a vegetarian permanently. Not for the episode, not for the season, permanently, the writers agreed, and Lisa Simpson has been a vegetarian for over 30 years now. Paul McCartney extracted a binding narrative commitment from an animated television show, and the show has honored it through every writer's room, every showrunner, every production challenge since 1995. If you play the closing credits of that episode backward, you can hear McCartney reading a recipe for lentil soup. The show hid that detail in the audio as an Easter egg for fans patient enough to find it. The Simpson family received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame on January 14th, 2000. They are fictional characters. They were drawn by a man who was running late for a meeting. And they have a permanent physical marker on the same stretch of sidewalk as Marilyn Monroe and Frank Sinatra. Time magazine didn't just put Bart on its influential people list. The magazine went further and named The Simpsons the greatest television series of the 20th century. Not the greatest animated series, the greatest television series, above dramas and comedies and prestige programs and limited series and everything else that aired between 1900 and 1999. A cartoon about a yellow family in a town with no fixed location was declared the best thing television had ever produced. In 2009, Marge Simpson appeared on the cover of Playboy magazine, an animated character on the cover of Playboy. The levels of cultural penetration this show achieved are genuinely difficult to overstate. The show wasn't just making cultural waves on television. It built an entire entertainment empire that stretched into theme parks, arcades, and one of the most beloved video games of all time. The Simpsons movie came out in July of 2007. It had been in development for years. The writing process was modeled on the show's own writer's room approach. They brought back writers from the early years of the show and gave each one a section of the film to work on, then combined everything and reworked it into a unified narrative. 11 writers are credited on the final screenplay. That's an enormous number for a feature film, but it reflects the show's collaborative DNA. David Silverman directed. Albert Brooks voiced the villain, Russ Cargill, the head of the EPA who encases Springfield under a giant dome after Homer pollutes the lake. Hans Zimmer composed the score. The movie's estimated budget was $75 million, and it grossed approximately $527 million worldwide, making it the 8th highest grossing film of 2007. At the time of its release, it was the 2nd highest grossing traditionally animated film ever, behind only The Lion King. It holds an 87% on Rotten Tomatoes and an 80 on Metacritic. And here's a detail that fans still talk about. Hank Scorpio, the beloved one-off villain from You Only Move Twice, was originally planned as the movie's antagonist. Albert Brooks was going to reprise the role that he had created in that Season 8 episode. At some point during development, the decision was made to create a new character instead. Fans have been vocal about their disappointment ever since. A sequel is coming. Tentatively titled The Simpsons 2, it's currently expected for September of 2027. Specific plot details and production status remain thin at this point, but the fact that it took 20 years to get a second movie says something about how carefully the show's producers approached the feature film format. The video game history of The Simpsons is its own story. The 1991 Konami arcade game was a classic 4-player beat-em-up that appeared in arcades worldwide. You could play as Homer, Marge, Bart, or Lisa, fighting through waves of enemies to rescue Maggie from Smithers. It's still considered one of the great arcade games of its era. Bart vs. the Space Mutants came out the same year on NES, and it was notoriously, almost sadistically difficult. The kind of game where you knew the people who designed it were laughing at you while you played. The Simpsons Road Rage from 2001 was essentially a Simpsons-themed Crazy Taxi. But the one game that every Simpsons fan remembers with genuine affection is The Simpsons Hit and Run from 2003. It was a GTA-style open-world game set in Springfield, published by Vivendi and developed by Radical Entertainment. You could drive around Springfield, explore the town, take on missions, and just exist in the world of the show. It became a cult classic, and it remains the single most requested remaster in the Simpsons gaming community. Fans have been begging for an updated version for over 20 years. The Simpsons Tapped Out, the mobile city builder game from EA, ran for 12 years. From 2012 to 2024. It generated substantial revenue and was regularly updated with content tied to new episodes. For many fans, Tapped Out was their most consistent, ongoing relationship with the franchise outside of the show itself. And in 2025, The Simpsons entered Fortnite. Epic Games ran a Simpsons-themed season complete with original animated shorts and a playable Springfield Island map. The crossover brought The Simpsons to a generation of players who might never have watched the show on television. It was arguably the franchise's most significant expansion into gaming since Hit and Run. The theme parks deserve mention. The Simpsons ride opened at Universal Studios Florida in May of 2008 and at Universal Studios Hollywood shortly after. It replaced Back to the Future, the ride, which is itself a piece of theme park history. Around 2013, both parks expanded the Simpsons' presence with a full themed area called Springfield, featuring Krusty Burger, Moe's Tavern, Lard Lad Donuts, a Duff Brewery, and other Springfield landmarks. You can walk through a physical recreation of the Simpsons universe, eat at the restaurants, drink the beer. The fictional world became a real place you can visit. Matt Groening founded Bongo Comics specifically to publish Simpsons comics. The main Simpsons comics line ran from 1993 to 2018, producing 245 issues. Alongside it were Bartman, a superhero parody series, Tree House of Horror, an annual horror anthology, and Radioactive Man, which functioned as meta-commentary on the history of comic books. The comic side of the franchise was substantial and ran for a quarter century. The Longest Daycare, a Maggie Simpson theatrical short, was released in 2012 and screened before the movie Ice Age Continental Drift. It was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Animated Short Film at the 2013 ceremony. That was the franchise's first Oscar nomination. A short film about a baby fighting for the survival of a butterfly nearly won an Academy Award. Disney Plus has produced a series of Simpsons-branded shorts since the show moved to the platform. Star Wars crossovers, Marvel crossovers, Disney Plus anniversary specials, a short featuring Billie Eilish. There have been at least 9 of these shorts as of late 2024, and they represent the show's adaptation to a new distribution model where quick, shareable content matters as much as weekly half-hour episodes. For decades, watching The Simpsons meant waiting for Sunday nights on Fox, but the streaming era changed everything, and it almost changed the show's future permanently. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the streaming era and the fight to survive. The story of how The Simpsons adapted to the death of traditional television is a story about a show that refused to become irrelevant. When The Simpsons premiered in 1989, there were 4 broadcast networks. Cable was growing but hadn't yet fractured the audience. Streaming didn't exist. DVR didn't exist. The idea that people would watch television on their phones would have sounded like science fiction. The Simpsons was built for a world where 30 million people would sit down at the same time on the same night and watch the same show. That world is gone. Like every broadcast television program, The Simpsons' live viewership has declined dramatically. Recent seasons average approximately 2 to 4 million live viewers. Season 34 averaged less than 2 million on the linear broadcast. Compare that to the 33.6 million who watched Bart Gets an F in 1990, and the scale of the change becomes stark. The audience didn't disappear, they migrated, they moved to streaming, to on-demand, to watching on their own schedule through their own devices. Disney Plus became the primary global home for The Simpsons after Disney's acquisition of 21st Century Fox's entertainment assets. Every completed season is available there. The Simpsons movie is there. The Disney Plus shorts are there. The only thing missing is Stark raving dad, and that absence is deliberate. When The Simpsons first appeared on Disney Plus, there was a problem. The classic episodes, originally produced in 4:3 standard definition, were being presented in cropped widescreen. The wider frame cut off visual gags that were designed for the top and bottom of the original format. Fans noticed immediately. Jokes were being literally cut off by the aspect ratio. Disney responded in May of 2020 by adding a 4:3 viewing option for the classic episodes, letting viewers watch them in their original intended format. In March of 2025, Disney Plus launched a 24/7 Simpsons always-on stream, cycling through seasons 1 through 35 continuously. You can turn it on at any time, day or night, and The Simpsons is playing. It's the streaming equivalent of a channel that never stops broadcasting one show. For people who grew up watching Simpsons reruns in the background of their lives, it's a deliberate recreation of that experience in a streaming environment. In December of 2025, Disney announced that The Simpsons had surpassed 1 billion hours streamed on Disney Plus during 2025 alone. 1 billion hours in a single year. Nielsen had previously reported The Simpsons as the 10th most streamed acquired program of 2022, accumulating 15.87 billion minutes of watch time that year. The audience may not be watching on Sunday nights anymore, but they are absolutely watching. More people might be consuming The Simpsons now than at any point in its history. They're just doing it differently. FXX played its own significant role in the show's streaming era identity. In August of 2014, FXX aired Every Simpsons Ever, a 552-episode, 12-day continuous marathon. It was the longest continuous marathon in television history at the time, and it was the highest-rated broadcast day in FXX's history. The marathon was an event, a celebration, and a reminder that even in a fragmented media landscape, people would still show up for The Simpsons if you gave them a reason. The 2011 near cancellation looms over all of this like a shadow. Fox looked at the production costs, which were running at approximately $5 million per episode, and the declining live ratings, and made a simple calculation. The show was too expensive for what it was delivering in traditional metrics. They threatened to end it unless costs were cut by 45%. The cast took pay cuts, the production tightened, and the show survived. But that moment revealed something important about The Simpsons' position in television. Even the most beloved show in history is only as secure as its balance sheet. The current renewal extends the show through season 40. That's 40 seasons. Seasons 37 through 40 will follow a hybrid model, with 15 Fox broadcast episodes plus 2 Disney Plus exclusive specials per season. The total episode count, including specials, is projected to reach at least 858. The show has already produced its 800th episode. Guess Who's Coming to Skinner aired on December 7th, 2025, as the 800th episode in the overall count. The 800th Fox broadcast episode, Irrational Treasure, was scheduled for February 15th, 2026. COVID-19 hit in March of 2020, and the show adapted with remarkable speed. Production for season 32 moved entirely remote. The cast recorded from home studios. Table reads happened over video calls, and no episodes were missed, not a single one. The show that had survived salary disputes, writer strikes, and cancellation threats also survived a global pandemic without a hiccup in its production schedule. The 2023 WGA strike reduced season 35 to 18 episodes, down from the usual order. Because Simpsons episodes require a roughly 6-month lead time, the strike's impact on the broadcast schedule was limited compared to live-action shows that can't build that kind of buffer. But the reduced episode count was a visible reminder that even The Simpsons isn't immune to the forces that affect the rest of the industry. The 2-part Christmas special, Oh Come On All Ye Faithful, dropped on Disney Plus on December the 17th, 2024, which was the 35th anniversary of the show's original premiere date. That's not a coincidence. The show that started with a Christmas special returned to Christmas on the same date 35 years later on a platform that didn't exist when the show began. Everything about television changed between those two December 17ths. The technology, the distribution, the audience, the business model, the cultural conversation. Everything changed except The Simpsons, which just kept being The Simpsons. After 37 seasons and counting, The Simpsons isn't just a show anymore. It's a living historical document, one of the longest continuous creative projects in human history, and the numbers prove it. The Guinness World Records held by The Simpsons tell the story of a show that simply outlasted everything else. Longest-running primetime animated series, Longest-running American sitcom by number of episodes. Longest-running American scripted primetime television series by both seasons and episodes. Most guest stars featured in a television series at 810 as of April 2020, though the number has grown since. Most Emmy awards for an animated series. The Emmy record alone is remarkable. The Simpsons has won 37 primetime Emmy awards from approximately 100 to 104 nominations. It has won Outstanding Animated Program 12 times, which is the most wins in that category by any series. It's been nominated nearly every year since 1990, with exceptions in 1993 and 1994, when the producers submitted for Outstanding Comedy Series instead, and 2014. The show has also won 16 Emmys for Outstanding Voiceover Performance. Dan Castellaneta, Hank Azaria, and Harry Shearer have all won multiple times. Julie Kavner, Nancy Cartwright, and Yeardley Smith have each won as well. The voice cast has been recognized more than the cast of many live-action series. The Simpsons has never been nominated for Outstanding Comedy Series, despite 2 attempts in 1993 and 1994. There's an invisible wall in the Emmys between animated and live-action programming that The Simpsons has never been able to cross. Despite being, by many critical assessments, one of the greatest comedies ever produced in any format. The show was the first animated series to win a Peabody Award, receiving the honor in 1996 for providing exceptional animation and stinging social satire. It won a second Peabody in 2020, an institutional award recognizing its 30th year. Only a handful of shows in television history have received multiple Peabody Awards. The Annie Awards, which recognize excellence in animation specifically, have given The Simpsons 34 wins, including 12 consecutive wins for Best Animated Television Production. The Writers Guild of America has awarded the show 13 WGA awards, including 11 wins in 12 years between 2004 and 2015. The season count record fell on September 27, 2009, when the premiere of Season 21 surpassed Gunsmoke's 20 seasons, making The Simpsons the longest-running American primetime scripted television series by number of seasons. The episode count record followed later. The Simpsons passed Gunsmoke's total during Season 29, becoming the longest-running American primetime scripted series by episode count as well. The total number of wins and nominations across all ceremonies stands at 187 wins and 382 nominations as of early 2026. That includes Emmys, Peabodys, Annies, WGA Awards, People's Choice Awards, Environmental Media Awards, and dozens of other recognitions from industry bodies around the world. James L. Brooks' record is worth repeating because it's almost hard to believe. He holds the record for most primetime Emmys won by a single person, with 22 total across his career. 12 of those came from The Simpsons. One man won more Emmys from one show than most entire series accumulate over their full run. There are no DVD or Blu-ray releases for Seasons 21 and beyond as of February 2026. Physical media for The Simpsons peaked with a complete Seasons 1 through 20 box set released in December of 2019. After that, the streaming era effectively ended the show's relationship with physical releases. The Season 20 Blu-ray, released in January of 2010, was the first HD release, and then the discs just stopped. If you want to watch Season 25 or Season 30 or Season 35, you're going to a streaming platform. The era of collecting Simpsons DVDs is over. Matt Selman's ascension to sole showrunner from Season 38 onward marks a genuinely new chapter. Al Jean ran the show for 2 decades. Before him, there was Scully and Oakley and Weinstein and Merkin and Jean and Rice, and the original trio of Groening, Brooks, and Simon. The showrunner position is the single most important creative role on The Simpsons, and every transition has reshaped what the show is. Selman's era has been characterized by formal experimentation, more cinematic direction, and a willingness to break the show's traditional structure. If season 33 onward is any indication, the next phase of The Simpsons will look and feel different from anything that came before. The Simpsons started as crude doodles sketched in a lobby by a man who was running late. The intended premiere was shelved because the animation was too ugly. The Christmas special that replaced it drew 27 million viewers and launched the most dominant franchise in television history. It survived salary disputes and cast departures and writer strikes and near cancellation and a global pandemic and the complete transformation of the medium it was built for. It broke every record, won every award, changed the English language, predicted the future by accident, influenced generations of comedians and writers and showrunners, and just kept going. Season 37 is airing right now. Season 40 is already ordered. The show's total episode count will pass 850. And somewhere in Springfield, in a fictional house at 742 Evergreen Terrace in a town that doesn't exist in any specific state, Homer is sitting on the couch watching TV. Same as he was in 1989, same as he'll be in 2030. Some things change. The Simpsons just adapts and continues. It always has. It probably always will. Now let's go deeper, because the surface level facts are just the beginning. The Simpsons is full of hidden details, structural innovations, and creative decisions that most viewers never notice. And those details are where the show's genius actually lives. Let's talk about Treehouse of Horror. Every year since season 2, The Simpsons has produced a Halloween special. They're called Treehouse of Horror episodes, and they exist outside of the show's normal continuity. Characters can die. The laws of physics don't apply. The show's writers can do literally anything they want without worrying about consequences for the rest of the season. These episodes are anthologies, typically containing 3 separate short stories, and they've become one of the most beloved traditions in all of television. The first Treehouse of Horror aired in 1990 as part of season 2. It featured 3 segments, one based on Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven, one about a haunted house the Simpsons move into, and one about an alien abduction. The Raven segment featured James Earl Jones narrating, and it was one of the earliest examples of the show's willingness to take genuine literary material and present it through the lens of animation comedy. They weren't just making fun of Poe, they were adapting him with real respect for the source material while also making it funny. That balance between homage and parody has defined the Treehouse of Horror episodes ever since. Over the decades, the Treehouse episodes have parodied virtually every horror film, science fiction movie, and thriller that exists. The Shining became The Shinning because, as groundskeeper Willie tells Bart, they didn't want to get sued. Nightmare on Elm Street, Twilight Zone, King Kong, Jurassic Park, A Clockwork Orange, Coraline, IT, The Exorcist. The show has taken on all of them. And because the Treehouse episodes are consequence-free, they can go to places the regular show never would. Homer can die. Bart can become a vampire. Lisa can destroy the world. The freedom is what makes them special. The couch gag tradition is another one of those structural innovations that seems simple, but is actually quietly brilliant. Every episode of The Simpsons begins with the family rushing to their living room couch to sit down and watch TV. And every episode, something different happens during that sequence. Sometimes the couch is normal and the family just sits down. Sometimes the couch is replaced by something absurd. Sometimes the gag takes a few seconds. Sometimes it takes over a minute. The couch gags serve a practical purpose that most viewers don't think about. The running time of a Simpsons episode varies slightly from week to week. Some scripts run a little long, some a little short. The couch gag is a modular component that can be lengthened or shortened to fit the episode into its time slot. A longer couch gag means a shorter episode. A shorter couch gag means more time for the story. It's an elegant production solution disguised as a comedy bit. But over time, the couch gags became an art form in their own right. Guest artists and animators have been invited to create couch gags in their own styles. Banksy designed one that depicted The Simpsons being produced in a sweatshop, a satire of outsourced animation labor that aired on Fox without the network apparently realizing how pointed it was. Animator Don Hertzfeldt created a couch gag that depicted The Simpsons thousands of years in the future, their forms degraded into abstract shapes, their catchphrases corrupted into meaningless noise. It was genuinely unsettling and beautiful, and it aired as the opening sequence of a regular Sunday night episode. The most reused couch gag is the circus line gag, where the family runs in and sits down and nothing unusual happens. It's the default, the template, the version that plays when the episode needs every available second for the actual story. But the special ones, the guest-directed ones, the ones that take risks, those are the ones that people remember and share. The chalkboard gag is the other structural tradition. At the beginning of every episode, Bart is seen writing a line on the chalkboard as punishment. These lines change every episode and often reference current events, meta-commentary about the show, or just pure absurdity. I will not waste chalk. I will not instigate revolution. The Simpsons Halloween special is not a Halloween special. The chalkboard gag after Marsha Wallace's death simply read, "We'll really miss you, Mrs. K," and it's one of the most emotionally powerful moments in the show's history. One line of text on a cartoon chalkboard carrying genuine grief. Now let's talk about the episodes that made people cry. Because for all of its comedy, The Simpsons has produced some of the most emotionally devastating television ever made. Lisa's substitute from season 2 is often cited as the first truly great Simpsons episode. Lisa develops a crush on her substitute teacher, Mr. Bergstrom, voiced by Dustin Hoffman under the pseudonym Sam Eddick. Bergstrom is everything Homer isn't. He's intelligent, cultured, engaged, present. When he leaves at the end of the episode, Lisa is heartbroken. She chases him to the train station and asks him what she should do. He hands her a note. It reads, "You are Lisa Simpson." That's it. That's all the note says. And it's one of the most perfect moments in the show's history. Lisa doesn't need instructions or advice. She just needs to be reminded that being herself is enough. And Maggie Makes 3 from season 6 tells the story of how Maggie was conceived. Homer had finally achieved his dream. He'd quit the nuclear power plant and gotten a job at the bowling alley. He was happy, genuinely, unreservedly happy for the first time in his life. And then Marge told him she was pregnant again. Homer had to go back to the power plant. He had to give up his dream to support a child he hadn't planned for. When he arrives back at the plant, Mr. Burns has installed a plaque that reads, "Don't forget, you're here forever." It's cruel. It's designed to break you. But the final scene reveals that Homer has covered parts of the letters with photos of Maggie, so the plaque now reads, "Do it for her." It's a gut punch. It says everything about Homer Simpson in 3 words. He gave up his happiness for his daughter, and he doesn't regret it. Mother Simpson from season 7 revealed the fate of Homer's mother, Mona, who had been absent from his life since he was a child. Mona was a political activist who went into hiding after participating in a raid on Mr. Burns's biological weapons laboratory. She abandoned Homer not because she didn't love him, but because staying would have put him in danger. The final scene of the episode shows Homer sitting alone on the hood of his car, staring at the night sky after his mother has left again. There's no dialogue, no joke, just Homer, alone, watching the stars. The credits play over that image in silence. It's one of the most purely sad endings in the history of television comedy. Lisa's Wedding from season 6 shows Lisa as a young woman in the year 2010. She's engaged to a British man named Hugh. Everything seems perfect until Hugh clashes with Homer at the rehearsal dinner. Lisa has to choose between the man she loves and the father she's embarrassed by. She chooses Homer. She always chooses Homer. and the episode is quietly devastating because it's about the tension between wanting a better life and being unable to leave behind the people who shaped you, even when those people are loud and embarrassing and eat with their hands. Homer's enemy from season 8 is different from the other emotional episodes because the emotion it generates is discomfort. Frank Grimes, voiced by Hank Azaria, is a new employee at the nuclear power plant who has earned everything he has through hard work and sacrifice. He looks at Homer, a man who has a loving family, a steady job, and a house despite being incompetent and lazy, and Grimes can't understand it. He can't accept that the world rewards Homer for being Homer while punishing him for trying. By the end of the episode, Grimes has a mental breakdown and electrocutes himself at the plant. The show plays his funeral for laughs, with Homer falling asleep and shouting, "Change the channel, Marge," during the service. It's one of the darkest episodes the show ever produced, and it's structured as a deconstruction of the show's own premise. What would a realistic person think if they had to exist in Homer's world? They would go insane. And that's exactly what happens. These episodes matter because they prove that The Simpsons was never just a comedy. It was a show about a family, and the best family stories are the ones that make you feel something real. The jokes are what brought people to Springfield. The emotions are what made them stay. Let's go even deeper into Springfield itself, because the town has layers that most viewers never think about. Springfield has a population that fluctuates wildly depending on the episode, but the show has established hundreds of recurring residents over its run. The depth of the secondary and tertiary cast is unmatched in animation. Most animated shows have a core cast of maybe 10 to 15 characters. The Simpsons has a functioning town with a government, a police force, a school system, multiple churches, a hospital, a nuclear power plant, a port, a military base, a prison, an opera house, and dozens of small businesses. Each one of these institutions has its own staff, its own regulars, its own ecosystem of running gags. Moe's Tavern alone is a world unto itself. Moe Scheisslack, the bartender, is one of the most complex characters in the show's history. He's pathetic and lonely and occasionally violent and deeply sad. His backstory has been explored in multiple episodes, revealing that he was a child actor, that he's been unlucky in love his entire life, that he's attempted suicide multiple times, that the bar rag he uses has its own horrifying history. Moe is a character who would be the tragic center of a prestige drama if he appeared in any other show. In The Simpsons, he's a punchline who occasionally reveals the abyss underneath the joke. The school system is anchored by Springfield Elementary, where Principal Skinner maintains order through bureaucratic desperation. Groundskeeper Willie handles maintenance through barely contained rage, and the teaching staff ranges from Miss Hoover's exhausted indifference to Mrs. Krabappel's world-weary cynicism. The school functions as a complete social ecosystem for the show's child characters, with its own cliques, hierarchies, and traditions. Nelson Muntz's "ha ha" is as recognizable as any catchphrase Homer has ever produced. The nuclear power plant is another self-contained world. Mr. Burns runs it with aristocratic contempt for his employees. Smithers enables him with desperate loyalty. Homer somehow maintains his position despite incompetence that should have caused multiple meltdowns. Lenny and Carl exist in their own strange friendship that has been running in the background of the show for decades. The plant is a satire of corporate America, and it's been doing that satire longer than most actual corporations have existed. The religious community in Springfield is represented primarily by the First Church of Springfield, where Reverend Lovejoy delivers sermons with barely concealed boredom to a congregation that includes virtually every major character. The show's treatment of religion is one of its most nuanced ongoing threads. Homer has had direct conversations with God. Lisa has explored Buddhism. Ned Flanders represents devout Christianity played for comedy, but also treated with genuine respect in the show's best episodes. The show has never been anti-religion. It's been skeptical of institutional religion while acknowledging that faith matters to people in real and meaningful ways. The couch at 742 Evergreen Terrace is the most famous piece of furniture in television history. More scenes have been set on and around that couch than on any other set piece in any show. The couch gag alone has produced hundreds of unique variations. The living room, the kitchen, the dining room, Bart's bedroom, Homer and Marge's bedroom. These spaces are as familiar to viewers as rooms in their own houses. People who've watched the show for decades can describe the layout of the Simpson home from memory. They know where the TV is. They know where the phone hangs on the kitchen wall. They know the shape of the backyard and the color of the front door. The house is as real as any physical location on television, despite being made entirely of drawn lines. The show's relationship with music extends far beyond the Danny Elfman theme and Alf Clausen's orchestral underscore. The Simpsons has produced some genuinely great original songs over the years. We Put the Spring in Springfield won an Emmy. You're Checking In, a Betty Ford Clinic musical number, won another. See My Vest, Mr. Burns' song about making clothing from animal pelts, is a perfect parody of Be Our Guest from Beauty and the Beast. Monorail, the musical number from Marge Versus. The monorail is as catchy as anything from an actual Broadway show. The show's musical episodes and musical moments are consistently excellent because the writers understood that committing fully to the musical form, rather than half-heartedly dropping in songs, produced better comedy and better music. The Who Shot Mr. Burns mystery deserves its own moment. It was the Season 6 finale and Season 7 premiere, airing in May and September of 1995. It was designed as The Simpsons version of Who Shot JR, the famous Dallas cliffhanger from 1980. The two-parter was treated as a genuine television event. Fox ran Springfield's Most Wanted, a special program styled after America's Most Wanted, to build hype during the summer hiatus. Fans debated the identity of the shooter for months. The show even offered a contest where viewers could call in with their guesses. The answer was Maggie Simpson. The baby did it. The 1-year-old who never speaks shot Mr. Burns because he tried to take her lollipop. It was simultaneously the most absurd and most logical answer possible, and fans have debated whether it was a satisfying resolution ever since. The 138th episode spectacular, a clip show hosted by Troy McClure, even showed an alternate ending where Smithers was the shooter, acknowledging that the writers had considered a more conventional resolution before choosing the more surprising one. The floating timeline is one of the most interesting structural decisions the show ever made, and it's become more noticeable over time. The Simpsons uses a floating timeline, meaning the characters don't age. Homer is always around 36 to 39. Bart is always 10, Lisa is always 8, Maggie is always a baby. But the world around them changes. Technology advances, cultural references update, presidents change. The Simpsons exist in the current year, whatever year that is, but they themselves are frozen in time. This creates a strange problem with flashback episodes. Early seasons showed Homer and Marge meeting in the 1970s, falling in love during the disco era. But as the show continued, those flashbacks had to be moved forward. Later episodes show Homer and Marge as teenagers in the 1990s, meeting during the grunge era. The show essentially rewrites its own history every decade to keep the characters' ages consistent with the present day. Homer's childhood keeps getting more recent. Bart's birth keeps moving forward. The family's past is perpetually being rewritten to maintain the illusion of an eternal present. Futurama shares creative DNA with The Simpsons, but is not technically a spin-off. Matt Groening created both shows, and several Simpsons writers moved to Futurama when it launched in 1999. David X. Cohen, a Simpsons staff writer, co-created Futurama with Groening. The two shows exist in separate universes, but have crossed over. Simpsorama, a season 26 episode, brought the Planet Express crew to Springfield. The Simpsons Guy, a Family Guy episode that aired in 2014, brought the Griffin family to Springfield for an hour-long crossover. And the Springfield Files from Season 8 crossed over with The X-Files, featuring David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson, voicing Fox Mulder and Dana Scully. The show's willingness to cross over with other properties while maintaining its own identity is a reflection of its cultural dominance. The Simpsons doesn't need other shows. Other shows need The Simpsons. When Family Guy crossed over, it was a bigger deal for Family Guy than for The Simpsons. When The X-Files crossed over, it elevated the Springfield Files into one of Season 8's best episodes. The Simpsons absorbs other properties into its world without being absorbed itself. Nancy Cartwright, the voice of Bart Simpson, is a devout Scientologist. This is a fact that creates an interesting tension with the show, which has satirized Scientology and organized religion generally throughout its run. Cartwright has been open about her faith, and the show has never directly addressed the connection between its most famous child character's voice actress and a religion it has occasionally mocked. It's one of those real-world details that sits uncomfortably alongside the fictional world and never quite resolves. The Simpsons has been translated into dozens of languages and broadcast in over 100 countries. The localization process for The Simpsons is one of the most complex in television because so much of the humor relies on English wordplay, American cultural references, and visual gags that carry meaning specific to American life. Every translation is essentially a creative adaptation, not just a word-for-word conversion. The French Homer sounds different from the German Homer sounds different from the Japanese Homer. Each localization team has to find equivalent jokes, equivalent cultural touchstones, equivalent emotional beats in their own language and culture. And here's a wonderful piece of trivia about the French version. The French voice actors for Homer and Marge, Philippe Pétieux and Véronique Augereau, actually got married in real life. The fictional marriage became a real one in French. The show has made appearances in the real world that blur the line between fiction and reality in strange ways. A real Simpsons house was built in 1997 as part of a promotional competition in Henderson, Nevada. It was a full-scale, fully furnished, completely livable house designed to look exactly like 742 Evergreen Terrace from the outside and match the show's floor plan on the inside. The winner of the competition was given the option to keep the house or take a cash prize. They took the cash. The house was later remodeled to look like a normal home and sold. Somewhere in Nevada, a family lives in a house that used to be the Simpsons house. The vehicle known as the Homer, the car Homer designed in the episode "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" has been created in real life. In the episode, Homer's long-lost half-brother Herb gives him the opportunity to design a car for his auto company. Homer's design is a disaster. It has multiple horns, a bubble dome, shag carpeting, and an enormous price tag that bankrupts Herb's company. Fans found the concept so entertaining that someone actually built a working replica. A fictional car designed by a cartoon idiot to be the worst car ever made now exists as a real drivable automobile. Dr. Nick Riviera, Springfield's cheerfully incompetent discount physician, was named after Elvis Presley's actual doctor, the real Dr. Nick Doctor. George Nicopolis was Presley's personal physician and was investigated for over-prescribing medication to the singer. The Simpsons took a real medical controversy and turned it into a cartoon character whose greeting, "Hi everybody," met by the response, "Hi Dr. Nick," became one of the show's most reliable running gags. Kang and Kodos, the two aliens who appear primarily in Treehouse of Horror episodes, are named after characters from Star Trek, the original series. Kang appears in the Star Trek episode Day of the Dove, and Kodos appears in The Conscience of the King. It's a deep cut that only Star Trek fans would catch, but The Simpsons has always been a show made by and for people who care about details. Cletus Spuckler and Brandine Spuckler have 44 named children in the show's continuity. 44. The show has kept track of them across multiple episodes over multiple seasons. It's one of those running gags that only works because someone on the writing staff committed to maintaining the count. The show's relationship with Springfield's geography is deliberately inconsistent, and this is by design. Springfield has been shown bordering an ocean, a desert, mountains, forests, farmland, and other cities in various episodes. The geography changes to suit the story. This isn't careless writing, it's the show maintaining the idea that Springfield is everywhere. It's every American town, and every American town has different geography, so Springfield has all of it, depending on what the episode needs. Homer Simpson once held the record for the most downloaded GPS navigation voice in the world. People chose to listen to Homer Simpson guide them through traffic over every other available option. There's something beautiful about that. Millions of people sitting in real cars on real roads, hearing a fictional character tell them to turn right. The line between Springfield and reality has always been thinner than it appears. Before we wind down, let's go through some more of the stories and details that make this show so endlessly fascinating. Because even after 35 years, there are facts about The Simpsons that still surprise people. Let's talk about the business side, because The Simpsons isn't just a creative achievement, it's one of the most profitable entertainment properties ever created. The merchandising alone has generated $1 billion industry, and that's not an exaggeration. In the early 1990s, Simpsons merchandise was everywhere. T-shirts, toys, posters, lunchboxes, bed sheets, video games, candy, cereal. The Bart Simpson image was so ubiquitous that it became almost unavoidable. You couldn't walk through a mall, a school hallway, or a gas station without seeing Bart's face staring back at you from something. Fox owns the rights to The Simpsons until 2082. That's not a typo. The year 2082. Whatever happens to The Simpsons as a television show, Fox or its corporate successors will control the intellectual property for another 57 years beyond today. That contract ensures that The Simpsons will exist as a commercially exploitable property well into the 22nd century. Your grandchildren's grandchildren could be buying Simpsons merchandise. The show's commercial footprint extends further into the future than almost any other entertainment property currently in existence. The character designs were created with a specific practical goal in mind. Matt Groening designed the Simpson family to be recognizable in silhouette. If you showed someone just the outlines of Homer, Marge, Bart, Lisa, and Maggie, without any color or detail, they would know exactly who they were looking at. Marge's towering blue hair, Homer's round belly and bald head with the 2 remaining strands, Bart's spiky outline, Lisa's star-shaped hair, Maggie's pacifier. Every character has a silhouette that functions as a logo. This wasn't accidental. Groening understood that for a character to become iconic, it had to be immediately identifiable at the simplest possible level of visual reduction. The characters were made yellow for a related reason. Groening wanted a color that would catch the eye of someone flipping through television channels. In the late 1980s, before remotes were ubiquitous and before streaming existed, people channel surfed by physically turning a dial or pressing buttons. You flip past dozens of channels in seconds. The yellow was designed to make you stop, to make your eye catch on something unusual, to make you think, what is that? And stay long enough to start watching. It worked. The Dio origin story is worth exploring in more detail. Dan Castellaneta based Homer's Dio on a Scottish actor named James Finlayson, who appeared in many Laurel and Hardy films. Finlayson had a catchphrase, a drawn-out "do," that he used as an expression of frustration. Castellaneta shortened it, sped it up, and made it Homer's own. In the scripts, the writers never wrote "do." They always wrote "annoyed grunt," and let Castellaneta interpret it. The Oxford English Dictionary eventually defined it as expressing frustration at the realization that things have turned out badly or not as planned, or that one has just said or done something foolish. The Behind the Laughter episode from season 11 is one of the most creatively daring things the show ever attempted. It's a full episode styled as a VH1 behind the music documentary, treating The Simpsons as real actors playing fictionalized versions of themselves on a hit TV show. Homer becomes addicted to prescription painkillers, Marge makes terrible business investments, Bart goes to jail. The show gets put on hiatus when the family falls apart. Fox replaces them with a reality show called Peepin' It Real, which follows the security camera footage at an Ann Taylor store. It's meta-comedy pushed to its absolute limit, and it works because the show had built up enough goodwill and enough mythology around itself that it could turn the mirror inward and find genuine comedy in its own existence. The show has depicted Homer's job at the nuclear power plant with a level of detail that nuclear engineers have actually studied. Homer is a safety inspector in Sector 7G. He got the job through a combination of luck and the fact that Mr. Burns will hire literally anyone who walks through the door. The show has shown the plant's control room, its cooling towers, its waste disposal systems, and its management hierarchy. Real nuclear engineers have written about how the show portrays nuclear safety, noting that while the specifics are obviously exaggerated for comedy, the general portrayal of bureaucratic incompetence, corner-cutting on safety, and the gap between official protocols and actual practice is disturbingly accurate. The town of Springfield has a mayor named Joe Quimby, who is essentially a Kennedy parody. He has the accent, the womanizing, the political scandals, and the entitled confidence of a New England political dynasty heir. But Quimby has been mayor for the entire run of the show. He's never been voted out. He's survived every scandal, every investigation, every public embarrassment. In a show where characters don't age and time doesn't really pass, Quimby represents the permanent political class. He can't be removed because the system that produced him perpetually renews him. Sideshow Bob, voiced by Kelsey Grammer, is one of the great recurring villains in television. He started as Krusty the Clown's sidekick, framed Krusty for armed robbery, went to prison, got out, tried to kill Bart, went back to prison, got out, tried to kill Bart again. This cycle has repeated across more than 20 episodes spanning the entire run of the show. But what makes Sideshow Bob special is that the show takes him seriously as a character. He's intelligent. He's cultured. He quotes Aristophanes. He performs Gilbert and Sullivan operettas. He's a genuinely dangerous man trapped in a comedic universe, and his episodes are consistently among the best the show produces because they let the writers play with genres. Cape Fear is a horror movie. The Italian Bob is a thriller. Black Widower is a mystery. Every Bob episode is also a genre exercise, and that flexibility keeps the character fresh across decades. Hans Moleman is one of the great background characters in all of television. He appears to be extremely elderly, but his driver's license has listed him as being 31 years old in at least one episode. He has been hit by cars, run over by trucks, struck by lightning, buried alive, and subjected to virtually every form of physical punishment the show can imagine. And he keeps coming back. He is either the unluckiest man in Springfield or some kind of immortal being trapped in a body that absorbs infinite punishment. The show has never explained which, and the ambiguity is part of his charm. Ralph Wiggum, Chief Wiggum's son, started as a background character and gradually evolved into one of the show's most reliable comedy engines. His non-sequiturs are legendary. I bet my Wookiee. Me fail English? That's impossible. I'm in danger. Ralph operates on a different wavelength than every other character in Springfield. He's either the most innocent or the most oblivious human being in the town. And every line he delivers feels like it's coming from a parallel universe where logic works differently. The show's relationship with its own audience has always been unusually self-aware. The Simpsons was one of the first shows to regularly break the fourth wall, to comment on its own production, to acknowledge the existence of the audience, and to make jokes about the network that aired it. Homer has insulted Fox by name. Characters have referenced the show's declining quality. The 138th episode spectacular had Troy McClure directly addressing the camera and answering fan mail. Behind the Laughter treated the entire show as a production with actors and ratings and cancellation threats. This self-awareness has evolved over the show's run. In early seasons, the fourth wall breaks were occasional and surprising. In later seasons, they became more frequent and more pointed. The show became a commentary on itself as much as a commentary on American life. The Springfield Mystery Spot, a location mentioned in several episodes, is one of many fictional Springfield landmarks that have accumulated over the decades. The town has a gorge that Bart attempted to jump on a skateboard. It has a tire fire that has been burning for years. It has a monorail system that was built by a con man and immediately failed. It has a lemon tree that was stolen by the rival town of Shelbyville. Each of these landmarks functions as a cultural touchstone within the show's universe, and collectively they create a sense of place that feels as real and as lived in as any fictional town in literature. The rivalry with Shelbyville, Springfield's neighboring town, is a running thread that has appeared across multiple seasons. Shelbyville was founded by Shelbyville, Manhattan, when he split with Jebediah Springfield over the issue of cousin marriage. Shelbyville wanted it, Springfield didn't. That founding myth, ridiculous as it is, informs the rivalry between the two towns throughout the show. Lemon of Troy, the season 6 episode where Bart and his friends cross into Shelbyville to recover their stolen lemon tree, is one of the most purely entertaining episodes the show has ever produced. It's essentially a children's war movie set in suburbia, and it captures the way that kids turn neighborhood conflicts into epic adventures. Jebediah Springfield himself, the town's legendary founder, was revealed in Lisa the Iconoclast to be a fraud. His real name was Hans Brungfeld, and he was a brutal pirate who attacked George Washington with a tongue-sharpened weapon. The statue in the town square commemorates a fictional version of a man who never existed in the way the town believes. Lisa discovers the truth and almost exposes it, but ultimately decides that the myth of Jebediah Springfield is more valuable to the town than the truth. It's one of the show's most sophisticated moral arguments, delivered through a story about an 8-year-old girl and a dead pirate. Let's talk about something that often gets overlooked when people discuss The Simpsons. The show's treatment of Marge is one of the most complex and underappreciated portrayals of motherhood in television history. Marge Simpson is the emotional center of the family. She holds everything together. She manages Homer's chaos, Bart's rebellion, Lisa's anxiety, and Maggie's needs, while also maintaining the household, navigating social obligations, and dealing with her own unfulfilled ambitions. In the best Marge episodes, the show explores the tension between who Marge is and who she might have been. She was talented, she was creative. She had potential that was consumed by the demands of being Homer Simpson's wife and raising 3 children in a town that barely functions. Episodes where Marge tries something new, painting, writing, bodybuilding, starting a business, almost always end with her returning to her role as caretaker. The show is honest about the fact that this is both her choice and her trap. She loves her family, she also gave up parts of herself for them. And the show never fully resolves that tension because it can't be resolved. It's the central tension of domestic life, and The Simpsons has been exploring it for 37 seasons. Lisa Simpson is arguably the show's moral compass and its most intellectually ambitious character. She's an 8-year-old vegetarian Buddhist jazz saxophonist who reads above her grade level and cares about the environment, feminism, civil rights, and social justice. She's also lonely. She's smarter than almost everyone around her, including most of the adults. Her intellectual gifts isolate her from her peers and create a constant friction with her family. Homer loves Lisa but doesn't understand her. Marge supports Lisa but can't always keep up with her. Bart actively antagonizes her, and Springfield, the town, is a place where Lisa's values are perpetually under siege. The show has handled Lisa with remarkable consistency across its entire run. She became a vegetarian in season 7 and stayed one. She explored Buddhism and maintained that exploration. Her intellectual curiosity has been a constant. In a show where characters don't grow or age, Lisa's beliefs have been the one area where the show has allowed genuine development and stuck with it. Maggie Simpson, the baby who never ages, has been the subject of some of the show's most creative episodes. She shot Mr. Burns. She has been the protagonist of multiple theatrical short films. She spoke her first word, Daddy, voiced by Elizabeth Taylor, in one of the show's most famous moments. And she's been a baby for 37 years. The show has played with Maggie's silence in increasingly inventive ways, finding comedy and pathos in a character who can't speak but can communicate through actions, expressions, and the occasional single word. Bart Simpson, the character who launched a cultural phenomenon, has evolved in the public's perception over the show's run. In the early seasons, Bart was the star. He was the reason people watched. His rebelliousness, his catchphrases, his attitude defined the show's public image. But over time, the show's center of gravity shifted to Homer. It was Homer who became the iconic character. Homer whose catchphrases dominated. Homer whose face appeared on merchandise and movie posters. Bart didn't become less important. Homer just became more so, and that shift reflected a broader cultural change. In the early 1990s, rebellion was marketable. By the late 1990s and into the 2000s, lovable idiocy was more relatable. Bart represented the America that wanted to break rules. Homer represented the America that couldn't follow them even when it tried. The show has produced over 800 episodes. It has been on the air for more than 35 years. It has generated more cultural references, more memorable quotes, more iconic moments, and more genuine emotional impact than almost any other work of fiction in any medium. It has survived every challenge the television industry has thrown at it. It has outlasted networks, technologies, cultural movements, and generations of viewers. Children who watched the first episode are now middle-aged adults with children of their own who watch the current episodes. The Simpsons has been a constant presence in American life for longer than most Americans have been alive, and it's still going. Season 37 is airing now. Season 40 is ordered. The 800th episode has already aired. A second movie is in development. The streaming numbers are enormous. The show isn't just surviving, it's thriving in a completely different media landscape than the one it was built for. The Simpsons started as crude doodles sketched in the lobby by a man running late to a meeting. It almost didn't premiere because the animation was too ugly. The Christmas special that replaced the original pilot drew 27 million viewers and launched the most significant animated franchise in television history. The characters were named after the creator's real family. The theme song was composed during a car ride home. The voice actors threatened to strike. The writer's room produced some of the greatest comedy minds of a generation. The show changed the English language, entered the Oxford English Dictionary, predicted the future by statistical accident, earned a star on the Walk of Fame for fictional characters, crossed over with live-action reality itself, and simply refused to stop existing no matter what happened to the industry around it. And somewhere in Springfield, in a house at 742 Evergreen Terrace, Homer is sitting on the couch. Marge is in the kitchen, Bart is writing on a chalkboard, Lisa is playing her saxophone, and Maggie is sucking her pacifier, saying nothing, seeing everything. Same as they were in 1989, same as they'll be tomorrow night, and the night after that, and the night after that. Actually, before we go, let's keep going a bit longer. Because if you're still awake, there are more stories worth telling. And if you've drifted off, this will be here when you come back. Let's talk about the show's relationship with the holiday season, because some of its most iconic moments are tied to specific holidays in ways that have become traditions for millions of families. Simpsons Roasting on an Open Fire, the series premiere, wasn't just a Christmas episode. It was a Christmas episode about financial desperation. Homer discovers he won't be getting his Christmas bonus at work. Marge's holiday savings are spent on removing a tattoo Bart got. The family has almost no money for gifts. Homer takes a job as a mall Santa, then takes his meager earnings to the dog track. He loses, but he finds Santa's little helper, a retired racing greyhound, and brings him home. The family gets a dog instead of presents, and the episode ends with genuine warmth. The very first Simpsons episode established that this would be a show about a family that doesn't have enough money, doesn't have enough luck, and doesn't have enough sense, but has enough love. That's been the foundation of the entire series ever since. Marge Be Not Proud from Season 7 is a Christmas episode that takes a completely different approach. Bart shoplifts a video game from the Try and Save and gets caught. Marge is devastated, not because of the crime itself, but because it forces her to see Bart as someone she can't fully trust. The episode focuses on the relationship between mother and son, and the resolution, where Bart buys Marge a family portrait to make amends, is one of the most understated emotional moments in the show's entire history. It's a quiet episode, no spectacle, no big set pieces, just a mother and a son trying to find their way back to each other during Christmas. The Treehouse of Horror episodes function as an unofficial Halloween tradition for the show's audience. For over 30 years, the annual Halloween special has been as reliable as the holiday itself. Families plan their viewing around it. Fan communities rank and debate the segments endlessly. Even the weaker Treehouse episodes are still anticipated and watched, because the tradition of watching them has become inseparable from the tradition of celebrating Halloween for a certain generation of viewers. Now let's go back to the production side for a moment, because there are details about how the show is actually made that most people never hear about. Each episode's production begins in the writer's room in Los Angeles. The room works collectively to develop story ideas. Then, individual writers are assigned to draft scripts. Those scripts go through multiple rounds of room rewrites, where the entire writing staff works together to punch up jokes, tighten structure, and refine dialogue. This process is sometimes described as brutal by writers who've been through it, because every line is scrutinized and many jokes that one writer loves will be cut or replaced by the room's collective judgment. After the script is locked, the voice actors record their performances. Unlike many animated shows where actors record individually in separate booths on separate days, The Simpsons has historically tried to record the principal cast together when possible. This allows for genuine interaction between the performers, and it gives the dialogue a natural, conversational rhythm that you can't get from actors recording in isolation. When Dan Castellaneta and Julie Kavner are in the same room performing Homer and Marge, there's a chemistry that comes through in the final product. They're reacting to each other in real time. The animatic stage comes next. This is essentially a rough animated version of the episode, using simple drawings timed to the voice recordings. The animatic is where the episode's timing is really established. Jokes that seem funny on paper but don't work with visual timing get flagged here. Scenes that run too long get trimmed. The animatic is the show's first real test of whether an episode works as actual television rather than just words on a page. From the animatic, the episode moves to full animation. The layout stage, where the detailed backgrounds and character positions are established, is described by the production team as one of the most labor-intensive and time-consuming parts of the entire process. Every shot has to be planned. Every character has to be placed in relation to the camera and the environment. Every background detail has to be drawn and checked for consistency. This is where the production pipeline stretches into months of painstaking work. The overseas animation studios handle the actual frame-by-frame animation. The drawings and layouts from the American team are sent to South Korea, where teams of animators create the in-between frames that make the characters move smoothly, apply color to every digital frame, and assemble the final animation. The finished product is sent back to Los Angeles for review. If the quality doesn't meet the showrunner's standards, scenes are sent back for revision. This back-and-forth process across international borders is why each episode takes approximately 6 months from initial concept to final broadcast. Late rewrites can happen even after animation is well underway. If a joke feels dated by the time the animation comes back, or if a current event makes a particular gag feel wrong or tone-deaf, the writers can request changes. Voice actors may need to re-record lines. Animation may need to be adjusted or entirely redone for certain scenes. This flexibility is built into the production timeline, and it's one reason the show can occasionally feel topical, even though episodes are produced half a year in advance. The show does not use a live studio audience. It never has. There is no laugh track. There is no laughter in the room when lines are recorded. The voice actors perform in a recording studio, reading from scripts, sometimes alone and sometimes together. The final product is assembled from these recordings, the animation, the music composed and recorded separately, and the sound effects layered in during post-production. Everything you hear in a Simpsons episode was created independently and combined into a unified whole. It's a complex, labor-intensive process that the finished product makes look completely effortless. Let's talk about a few more specific episodes that deserve attention for what they tell us about the show's range. Homer the Great from Season 6 is the episode where Homer joins the Stonecutters, a secret society that parodies the Freemasons. The Stonecutters' anthem, "We Do," is one of the most memorable original songs in the show's history, cataloging the society's supposed control over everything from the British Crown to Steve Guttenberg's career. The episode satirizes conspiracy thinking, fraternal organizations, and Homer's desperate need to belong somewhere where he feels important. It also contains one of the show's most quoted lines, when Homer declares that being leader is the greatest thing that ever happened to him, only for the organization to immediately collapse under his complete lack of leadership ability. A Streetcar Named Marge from Season 4 casts Marge in a community theater production of A Streetcar Named Desire. The episode works on multiple levels simultaneously. It's a parody of Tennessee Williams. It's a character study of Marge's frustrations with Homer, who doesn't support her creative ambitions. And it contains a subplot where Maggie is at a daycare that functions like a miniature prison, complete with a shot-for-shot Great Escape parody, as the babies try to retrieve their confiscated pacifiers. The episode demonstrates the show's ability to operate on several frequencies at once, delivering knowing comedy for viewers who are familiar with Williams' work while also functioning perfectly for viewers who've never heard of Stanley Kowalski or Blanche Dubois. Homer at the Bat, the Season 3 episode that was the first to beat The Cosby Show in the ratings, deserves a closer look. Mr. Burns recruits 9 Major League Baseball players for the plant's softball team. Each player was voiced by the actual athlete, and each player suffers some ridiculous misfortune that prevents them from playing in the championship game. Ken Griffey Jr. develops grotesque gigantism from a nerve tonic. Wade Boggs gets knocked unconscious in an argument about the greatest British Prime Minister. Jose Canseco saves every piece of furniture from a burning house and misses the game entirely. Steve Sachs gets arrested for every unsolved murder in New York City. The episode is a perfect blend of real-world sports culture and Simpsons absurdism, and its legacy has endured for decades. In 2017, a television special called Springfield of Dreams documented the cultural impact of the episode on both the show and the real athletes who appeared in it. The Itchy and Scratchy Show, the cartoon within a cartoon that Bart and Lisa watch, is itself a brilliant piece of sustained meta-commentary. Itchy and Scratchy is a parody of Tom and Jerry pushed to absurd extremes of violence. A cat and mouse who exist solely to inflict graphic, creative destruction on each other. But the show uses Itchy and Scratchy to comment on the very thing The Simpsons itself was accused of being: violent entertainment for children. When parents in Springfield protest Itchy and Scratchy's violence in Itchy and Scratchy and Marge, the show is satirizing the real-world protests against The Simpsons' own content. The cartoon within the cartoon becomes a mirror that reflects the show's critics back at themselves. One of the show's most subtle and longest-running visual gags is the three-eyed fish, Blinky, who lives in the waters near the nuclear power plant. Blinky appeared in the second episode ever aired and has resurfaced periodically throughout the show's run. The fish became an unofficial symbol of the show's environmental commentary, representing the real-world consequences of nuclear contamination through a simple, memorable image. A fish with 3 eyes. It's the kind of visual shorthand that communicates an entire argument in a single frame. Springfield's economy is a fascinating thing to examine across the show's run. The town has a nuclear power plant, a military base, a port, various small businesses, a few large employers, in a general sense of economic precariousness that mirrors many real American small towns. The show has addressed unemployment, recession, factory closures, gentrification, and economic inequality through the lens of Springfield's perpetually struggling middle class. Homer's financial anxieties are not just character comedy, they're a running commentary on the American economic experience, and they've been relevant in every decade the show has aired. The show's treatment of education through Springfield Elementary is another thread worth appreciating. The school is perpetually underfunded, the textbooks are outdated, the teachers are burnt out, the principal is overwhelmed, the superintendent is incompetent, and the students range from Lissa's genuine brilliance to Ralph Wiggum's cheerful obliviousness. Springfield Elementary is American public education rendered in yellow, and it's been a more consistent and honest portrayal of the school experience than most dramas that have attempted to tackle the subject directly. The relationship between Homer and Ned Flanders is one of the great odd couple dynamics in television history. Ned is everything Homer isn't: devout, fit, kind, patient, responsible, and genuinely good. Homer resents him for it. He borrows things and never returns them. He insults Ned to his face. He takes advantage of Ned's generosity at every opportunity. And yet, in the moments that matter, Homer and Ned are neighbors in the truest sense. When Maude died, Homer was there. When Homer needed help, Ned showed up. Their relationship is a portrait of the way American neighbors actually interact. Petty annoyances on the surface, genuine connection underneath, and a mutual dependence that neither man would ever voluntarily acknowledge. There's a wonderful detail about the show's sound design that most viewers have never consciously noticed. The sound of Homer's footsteps changes depending on whether he's wearing shoes or walking barefoot. The sound of Springfield's traffic is slightly different in different neighborhoods. The ambient noise of Moe's Tavern includes specific background sounds that are unique to that location. The sound designers built Springfield as an auditory environment, not just a visual one. When you watch a Simpsons episode, your ears are absorbing a world of detail that your conscious mind may never process, but that contributes to the feeling that Springfield is a real, inhabited place. The show has also been remarkably consistent about certain details across its entire run. The Simpson family's phone number has remained the same. Their address has remained 742 Evergreen Terrace. Homer's social security number, 568470008, has been referenced multiple times. Springfield's zip code is 49007. These details create a sense of permanence and reality that anchors the show's more absurd moments. When Homer does something impossible, the fact that he does it from a specific address with a specific phone number makes it feel weirdly grounded. And that really is the secret of The Simpsons. It's grounded. Beneath the yellow skin and the four-fingered hands and the impossible physics and the floating timeline, there's a real family living a recognizable life in a recognizable town. They worry about money. They argue about dinner. They embarrass each other in public. They love each other in private. They're flawed and messy and loud and occasionally cruel and fundamentally decent. They're us. That's why the show has lasted 37 seasons. That's why it'll probably last 40 more. Because as long as families exist, and as long as those families are complicated and imperfect and held together by love that nobody quite knows how to express properly, The Simpsons will have something to say about them. Sweet dreams. Actually, one more thing. Because there are a handful of facts that didn't fit neatly anywhere else, but are too good to leave out of a 2-hour deep dive. The Simpsons has a tradition of hiding things in its background art that reward viewers who pause and look closely. Signs, posters, books, newspaper headlines, license plates. The show's background artists have spent decades sneaking jokes into every frame. Springfield's movie theater marquee changes constantly. Store signs contain puns and references. Newspaper headlines in the background often contain jokes that have nothing to do with the main plot but are funny in their own right. The level of detail in every frame of The Simpsons is staggering for a television show, and most of it flies by so quickly that it can only be appreciated when you freeze the image. The Springfield tire fire has been burning in the background of the show for the entire run. It's a permanent fixture of the town's landscape. There's no explanation for how it started. There's no plan to put it out. It just burns. It's become a symbol of Springfield's general approach to problem solving, which is to acknowledge the problem exists and then do absolutely nothing about it for decades. Lenny and Carl, Homer's co-workers at the nuclear plant, have one of the most understated relationships in the show. They're best friends, they go everywhere together, they finish each other's sentences. The show has played with the idea that their relationship might be more than friendship, but has never committed to a definitive answer. What the show has committed to is the idea that Lenny and Carl are inseparable, and that their bond is one of the few genuinely stable things in Springfield. Everything else in town falls apart regularly. Lenny and Carl remain Lenny and Carl. The opening credits of the show contain hidden details that change from episode to episode beyond just the chalkboard gag and the couch gag. Lisa's saxophone solo in the opening varies. The items scanned at the grocery checkout when Maggie is accidentally bagged have changed over time. These are small details that most viewers will never notice on a single viewing, but they contribute to the sense that every episode of The Simpsons is its own slightly unique experience, even in the parts that seem identical week to week. The show once calculated that Homer Simpson has died in over 40 episodes if you count Treehouse of Horror segments, fantasy sequences, and flash forwards. He's been electrocuted, fallen from cliffs, been shot into space, eaten poisonous food, and suffered every conceivable form of cartoon death. And he's always back on the couch the following week, unchanged and unkillable. Homer Simpson might be the most resilient character in fiction. Nothing can permanently harm him. Nothing can permanently change him. He exists in a state of eternal recovery, and that's both the source of his comedy and the reason millions of people find him comforting. In a world where everything changes, Homer Simpson stays exactly the same. There's something deeply reassuring about that. The show has produced episodes in almost every genre that exists. It's done musicals, mysteries, horror, science fiction, westerns, war stories, sports dramas, political thrillers, romantic comedies, and surrealist art films. It's done bottle episodes confined to a single location and epic episodes that span the globe. It's done meta-commentary about television and sincere emotional drama about family. No other show in history has demonstrated this kind of range over this kind of time frame. The Simpsons isn't one show, it's 1,000 different shows that happen to share the same characters in the same town. The fact that the show has been renewed through season 40 means that barring something truly extraordinary, The Simpsons will air its 40th season around 2028 or 2029. If it continues beyond that, and there's no particular reason to think it won't, the show could conceivably run into the 2030s. Children born after the show premiered in 1989 are now in their mid-30s. Their children are growing up watching new episodes. The Simpsons has become a multi-generational experience in a way that almost no other entertainment property can claim. It's not a show anymore. It's an institution. It's a fixture of American life as permanent as anything a television show can be. And the writers keep finding new things to say. The Matt Selman era has brought a creative energy that surprised people who had written the show off as being in permanent decline. The visual experimentation, the willingness to break format, the deeper character work in recent seasons suggest that The Simpsons isn't just coasting on nostalgia and brand recognition. It's still trying to be good. It's still trying to surprise people. And every once in a while, it still does. That's the story. Or at least, that's 2 hours of it. The full story would take much longer. There are 800 episodes, thousands of characters, millions of jokes, billions of hours watched. A show that started because a cartoonist was running late and didn't want to give up the rights to his comic strip. A show that almost died before it aired because the animation was ugly. A show that changed television, changed the English language, changed the way we think about animation, changed the way we think about comedy, and then just kept going while everything around it transformed beyond recognition. The Simpsons is still on, it's still airing new episodes, it's still making people laugh and occasionally making them cry. And it'll probably still be doing both long after the rest of us have moved on to whatever comes next. Good night, sweet dreams. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.